We're continuing with the spring running from the Jungle Books. Mowgli is kind of getting sick of the jungle. He stabbed a buffalo and ran over to a new city where his adopted human mother was, and he called out to her from outside her hut. "Who calls?" said the woman with a quiver in her voice. "Hast thou forgotten?" said Mowgli. His throat was dry as he spoke. "If it be thou, what name did I give thee? Say!" She had half shut the door, and her hand was clutching at her breast. "Nathu! Ohinathu!" said Mowgli, for as you remember, that was the name Messoa gave him when he first came to the Man Pack. "Come, my son!" she called, and Mowgli stepped into the light and looked full at Messoa, the woman who had been good to him and whose life he had saved from the Man Pack so long before. She was older, and her hair was gray, but her eyes and her voice had not changed. Woman-like, she expected to find Mowgli where she left him, and her eyes traveled upward in a puzzled way from his chest to his head that touched the top of the door. "My son," she stammered, and then, sinking to his feet, "But it is no longer my son. It is a godling of the woods, Ahai." As he stood in the red light of the oil lamp, strong, tall, and beautiful, his long black hair sweeping over his shoulders, his knife swinging at his neck, and his head crowned with a wreath of white jasmine, he might easily have been mistaken for some wild god of a jungle legend. The child, half asleep on a cot, sprang up and shrieked aloud with terror. Messoa turned to soothe him, while Mowgli stood still, looking in at the water jars and the cooking pots, the grain bin, all the other human belongings that he found himself remembering so well. "What wilt thou eat or drink?" Messoa murmured. "This is all thine. We owe our lives to you. But art thou him I call Nathu, or a godling indeed?" "I am Nathu," said Mowgli. "I am very far from my own place. I saw this light and came hither. I did not know thou wast here." "We came from Khanhiwara," Messoa said timidly. "The English would have helped us against those villagers that sought to burn us. Rememberest thou?" "Indeed, I have not forgotten. But when the English law was made ready, we went to the village of those evil people, and it was no more to be found." "That I also remember," said Mowgli with a quiver in his nostril. "My man therefore took service in the fields, and at last, for indeed he was a strong man, we held a little land here. It is not so rich as the old village, but we do not need much, we two." "Where is he, the man that dug in the dirt when he was afraid on that night?" "He is dead a year." "And he?" Mowgli pointed to the child. "My son, that was born 2 rains ago. If thou art a godling, give him the favour of the jungle, that he may be safe among thy people, as we were safe on that night." She lifted up the child, who, forgetting his fright, reached out to play with the knife that hung on Mowgli's chest, and Mowgli put the little fingers aside very carefully. "If thou art Nathu, whom the tiger carried away," Messoa went on, choking, "he is then thy younger brother. Give him an elder brother's blessing." "Hi, my! What do I know of the thing called blessing? I am neither a godling nor his brother. And, oh mother, mother, my heart is heavy in me." He shivered as he set down the child. "Like enough," said Messoa, bustling among the cooking pots. "This comes of running about the marshes by night. Beyond question the fever has soaked thee to thy marrow." Mowgli smiled a little at the idea of anything in the jungle hurting him. "I will make a fire, and thou shalt drink warm milk. Put away the jasmine wreath. The smell is heavy in so small a place." Mowgli sat down, muttering with his face in his hands. All manner of strange feelings that he had never felt before were running over him, exactly as though he had been poisoned, and he felt dizzy and a little sick. He drank the warm milk in long gulps, Messoa patting him on the shoulder from time to time, not quite sure whether he were her son Nathu of the long-ago days or some wonderful jungle being, but glad to feel that he was at least flesh and blood. "Son," said she at last. Her eyes were full of pride. "Have any told thee that thou art beautiful beyond all men?" "Ha!" said Mowgli, for naturally he had never heard anything of the kind. Messoa laughed softly and happily. The look on his face was enough for her. "I am the first, then? It is right, though it comes seldom, that a mother should tell her son these good things. Thou art very beautiful. Never have I looked upon such a man." Mowgli twisted his head and tried to see over his own hard shoulder, and Messowa laughed again, so long that Mowgli, not knowing why, was forced to laugh with her, and the child ran from one to the other, laughing too. "Nay, thou must not mock thy brother," said Messowa, catching him to her breast. "When thou art one half as fair, we will marry thee to the youngest daughter of a king, and thou shalt ride great elephants." Mowgli could not understand 1 word in 3 of the talk here. The warm milk was taking effect on him after his long run. So he curled up in a minute and was deep asleep, and Messowa put the hair back from his eyes, threw a cloth over him, and was happy. Jungle fashion, he slept out the rest of the night and all the next day, for his instincts, which never wholly slept, warned him there was nothing to fear. He waked at last, with a bound that shook the hut, for the cloth over his face made him dream of traps, and there he stood, his hand on his knife, the sleep all heavy in his rolling eyes, ready for any fight. Messowa laughed and set the evening meal before him. There were only a few coarse cakes baked over the smoky fire, some rice, and a lump of sour preserved tamarinds, just enough to go on with till he could get his evening kill. The smell of the dew in the marshes made him hungry and restless. He wanted to finish his spring running, but the child insisted on sitting in his arms, and Messowa would have it that his long blue-black hair must be combed out. So she sang as she combed, foolish little baby songs, now calling Mowgli her son, now begging him to give some of his jungle power to the child. The hut door was closed, but Mowgli heard a sound he knew well, and saw Messowa's jaw drop in horror as a great gray paw came under the bottom of the door, and Gray Brother outside whined a muffled and penitent whine of anxiety and fear. "Out and wait! You would not come when I called," said Mowgli in jungle talk without turning his head, and the great gray paw disappeared. Do not bring thy servants with thee," said Messowa. We have lived in peace. We have lived at peace with the jungle." "It is peace," said Mowgli, rising. "Think of that night on the road to Khanhiwara. There were scores of such folk before thee and behind thee. But I see that even in springtime the jungle people do not always forget. Mother, I go." Messowa drew aside humbly. He was indeed a wood god, she thought. But as his hand was on the door, the mother in her made her throw her arms around Mowgli's neck again and again. "Come back," she whispered. "Son or no son, come back, for I love thee. Look, he too grieves." The child was crying because the man with the shiny knife was going away. "Come back again," Messowa repeated, "by night or by day. This door is never shut to thee." Mowgli's throat worked as though the cords in it were being pulled, and his voice seemed to be dragged from it as he answered, "I will surely come back." "And now," he said, as he put by the head of the fawning wolf on the threshold, "I have a little cry against thee, Gray Brother. Why came ye not all 4 when I called so long ago?" "So long ago? But it was last night. We were singing in the jungle the new songs, for this is the time of new talk. Rememberest thou?" "Truly, truly." "And as soon as the songs were sung," Gray Brother went on earnestly, "I followed thy trail. I ran from all the others and followed Hotfoot. But, oh, little brother, what hast thou done, eating and sleeping with the man-pack?" "If ye had come when I called, this would never have been," said Mowgli, running much faster. "And now what is to be?" said Gray Brother. Mowgli was going to answer when a girl in a white cloth came down some path that led from the outskirts of the village. Gray Brother dropped out of sight at once, and Mowgli backed noiselessly into a field of high-springing crops. He could almost have touched her with his hand when the warm green stalks closed before his face and he disappeared like a ghost. The girl screamed, for she thought she had seen a spirit, and then she gave a deep sigh. Mowgli parted the stalks with his hands and watched her till she was out of sight. "And now," I do not know, he said, sighing in his turn. Why did ye not come when I called? We follow thee. We follow thee, Grey Brother mumbled, licking at Mowgli's heel. We follow thee always, except in the time of the new talk. And would ye follow me to the man-pack? Mowgli whispered. Did I not follow thee on the night our old pack cast thee out? Who waked thee lying among the crops? Aye, but again. Have I not followed thee tonight? Aye, but again and again. And it may be again, Grey Brother. Grey Brother was silent. When he spoke, he growled to himself. The Black One spoke truth, and he said, Man goes to man at last. Raksha, our mother, said, and so also said Akela on the night of the Red Dog, Mowgli muttered. So also says Kaa, who is wiser than us all. What dost thou say, Grey Brother? They cast thee out once with bad talk. They cut thy mouth with stones. They sent Buldeo to slay thee. They would have thrown thee into the Red Flower. Thou, and not I, hast said that they are evil and senseless. Thou, and not I follow my own people, didst let in the jungle upon them. Thou, and not I, didst make song against them more bitter even than our song against Red Dog. I ask thee what thou sayest. They were talking as they ran. Grey Brother cantered on a while without replying, and then he said, between bound and bound, as it were, Man-cub, master of the jungle, son of Raksha, lair brother to me, though I forget for a little while in the spring, thy trail is my trail, thy lair is my lair, thy kill is my kill, and thy death fight is my death fight. I speak for the three. But what wilt thou say to the jungle? That is well thought. Between the sight and the kill, it is not good to wait. Go before and cry them all to the council rock, and I will tell them what is in my stomach. But they may not come in the time of the new talk. They may forget me. Hast thou then forgotten nothing? Snapped Grey Brother over his shoulder, as he laid himself down to gallop. And Mowgli followed, thinking, at any other season, the news would have called all the jungle together with bristling necks, but now they were busy hunting and fighting and killing and singing. From one to another, Grey Brother ran, crying, The master of the jungle goes back to man! Come to the council rock! And the happy, eager people only answered, He will return in the summer heats. The rains will drive him to lair. Run and sing with us, Grey Brother. But the master of the jungle goes back to man! Grey Brother would repeat, Eeyawa! Is the time of new talk any less sweet for that? They would reply. So when Mowgli, heavy-hearted, came up through the well-remembered rocks to the place where he had been brought into the council, he found only four, Baloo, who was nearly blind with age, and the heavy, cold-blooded Kaa coiled around Akela's empty seat. Thy trail ends here, then, manling, said Kaa, as Mowgli threw himself down to his face in his hands. Cry thy cry. We be of one blood, thou and I, man and snake together. Why did I not die under Red Dog? The boy moaned. My strength is gone from me, and it is not any poison. By night and by day I hear a double step upon my trail. When I turn my head, it is as though one had hidden himself from me in that instant. I go to look behind the trees, and he is not there. I call, and none cry again. But it is as though one listened and kept back the answer. I lie down, but I do not rest. I run the spring running, but I am not made still. I bathe, but I am not made cool. The kill sickens me, but I have no heart to fight, except I kill. The red flower is in my body, my bones are water, and I know not what I know. And we will pause there.